Hello, welcome back to Friends Green Porsche Prep Book. In this episode, we're going to explore where your money is best spent if you've got a budget of around £40,000. Behind me, we've got two of what we think are the prime candidates. If you've got any better suggestions, leave them in the comments, but we think these are two good options. So we've got a 997 Generation 2, but for that budget, we think Carrera is more realistic rather than Carrera S or Carrera 4S. And then over this side, we've got a 981 Cayman S. We're really fond of these as well. So what we're going to do, I think the first thing we're going to do, we're going to run through what I believe is the most important aspect, is how much they're going to cost you to run and what maintenance you can expect they'll require of this kind of age. And then so we'll go through that in the workshop. We'll show our inspection being done that we do to all our sales prep cars. Then we're going to get them out. We'll talk about this spec and what they both come with. And then we'll get them on the road and say what we like about the way in which they drive. So yeah, we'll get them out of here, we're going to get them in the workshop, and we'll see you in there in a sec. Okay, here we are in the workshop. We've done our inspection. We didn't show the whole procedure being done. Didn't want to bore you, but rule of thumb with the 981s relative to the 997 that you're going to see in here in a second is we're seeing less prone wear to components and less things required. They're 4 years younger. It's the next generation on. So yeah, we're not seeing an awful lot of stuff. You'll see with the 997, we'll go through that in a sec. We're seeing a lot of coolant pipes, suspension bits and pieces, things you've seen on the channel before. So yeah, what we'll do, we're going to go underneath and Ollie will talk us through a couple of prone things we're seeing and some differences with these compared to the 991s, 997s. Okay, right, go on, talk us through this one prone issue we can think of with these 981 Caymans.
Right, so we're starting off at the back of the car, we're starting off with the exhaust system, and we're specifically talking about the Porsche switchable exhaust. This car we have in actually today doesn't actually have Porsche switchable exhaust, but we very frequently find that Porsche switchable exhaust doesn't work for one of two reasons. So it can either be the actuator, which is fitted to the exhaust in this sort of location, which is fitted to a vacuum, and the actual actuator we find is always seized up. So it can either be that, or it can be further up in the engine bay of the car where the solenoid doesn't work, which provides a vacuum for the switchable exhaust. So it'll be either one of these issues. To repair the actuator that's seized, it requires removing the whole exhaust. We'll get it down on the floor and we'll probably heat it up, get it lubricated and free it off. And then we'll have to refit the exhaust and get it all working.
What's involved with getting it off?
Well, what's involved with getting it off, it depends on the age of the car and how corroded stuff like the exhaust clamps are, which you can see up
those
there.
clamps to get off there.
Yeah, so you don't always have to take these off because you can take the whole exhaust down together, but sometimes you might well have to split the exhaust just in case these clamps have corroded through or cracked for whatever reason.
Depends on mileage, doesn't it? This one's low mileage, so they're not too bad.
These are actually in a good condition. Sometimes the flanges where you actually have to take the whole exhaust system off here, sometimes these bolts up here,
I can get in.
if you can get in there.
Get your torch on there.
So these bolts here can actually be very tricky sometimes, depending on the age of the car, because they're very difficult to cut out, because you've got the flange here, and if there's literally nothing left of the nut, they can be quite
Not much
tricky
access
to get
there
out.
either, is there?
No, there's not much access at all. But yeah, that's the process of fixing the Porsche.
But you will try and free them off on the car first, won't you? But often
Yeah.
it's not possible, and
Yeah, often.
whole thing on the floor for 3 or 4 hours.
Yeah, basically.
So that was the one prone issue that we can think of, and we think there are on these cars at the present time. But
we still have like the usual consumable items that we change. Aircon condensers, you can see they're still very exposed. You know, you can get loads of stone chips going in here. You can get the Zen Sport grills if you fancy. But we still do brakes. Once before we had a leak and shock absorber, but that was actually on one of our highest mileage Caymans that we had in. But apart from that, there's actually not that many prone issues at all.
that's the only suspension component we've ever changed on one of these yet,
Yeah.
isn't it? So that car was on 70,000 miles. So of that mileage, you're going to get some suspension components. That's the only one we've done on a 981 as of yet.
Yeah.
So, and then just routine servicing.
Yeah, and routine servicing. So we don't actually come across either. If you come around this side, I'll show you. Basically, on the previous generation, a very common fault is obviously the coolant crossover pipes. So they've actually changed the configuration of this now. If you ever look through there.
Yeah, I'm nicely zoomed in.
So they have far less of those weaker flanged ends on the coolant pipes, and where there is flanged ends, they're much more protected. So we don't come across that at all. So they've actually completely changed the configuration.
We'll show that in comparison to the 997 we're going to get in, shall we?
Yeah, so hopefully they'll hold up better, and we won't be finding any of that. Also, the shock assembly is a lot different on these, as you can see. We can compare it to the 997. But yeah, we haven't found any. Often we find it very common that the top of the stanchions, at the top of the shocks, are very badly corroded. We often do what we're doing.
We're
997 shocks like anything.
We're going for crossover coolant pipes and shocks at the top of the stanchions being
One of the
corroded.
most common
Yeah,
things
we'll
we
show
do.
that in a sec. But they've changed the configuration on both of these to eliminate those issues, haven't they? So yeah, like 981's consumables, brakes, air conditioning condensers, routine servicing, and if it's of a higher mileage, you'll start to wear suspension components, but we're not finding it much yet. There's not really much to talk about with this, is there? So there you go. Let's get the 997 in and see what we find.
Yeah.
So the 997's on the ramp, Ollie's done the inspection. I've just walked in and said to him, well, I've basically just guessed the things that are wrong because 997s have prone areas of wear and things that go wrong. So I've just shouted out, let me guess, front shock absorbers and rear arms. And Ollie's gone, yes, and a couple of other little bits. We haven't got any coolant pipes like we were talking about. Let's turn around and have a look. So should we just show by direct comparison what we were just talking about in the 981 Cayman and how the design's different on these and these suffer? So front shocks first, you were saying the assembly's totally different.
So right at the top of the stanchions, you can see you've got really excessive corrosion here.
Let me zoom in. Yeah.
Really excessive corrosion at the top. So that could obviously potentially snap in the future. So that needs replacing. Also usual bump stops are split. This coil spring's quite badly corroded, as you can see all the paint come off.
Yeah.
And the top mounts don't look too great, so we'll
The
be doing
body's
them
all
at the
corroded.
same time.
And the bushes usually start splitting and delaminating on the top mounts as well. So the whole shock absorber assembly basically, which, I mean, how many of these 997s? Just pretty much every, I mean, it's getting to the point where we may as well do like a fixed price to do
Yeah, we do them all the time.
front suspension assembly on a 997. And also just the bodies as well are always just badly corroded, aren't they? Look, if we get underneath the body of the shock absorber itself, look up there as well, underneath the spring retaining part is badly corroded. So this will be getting front shock absorbers, coil springs, top mounts, top bearings, bump stops, dust bellows. Probably the drop links as well, isn't it, Ollie? They're usually seized.
Well, they'll be seized in there.
So that will be seized in there, and Ollie will end up cutting those out. Should we show the coolant pipes?
Yeah, so on this car, the coolant pipes are alright. They might well have been changed at some point. But as we've seen before, they always flare up and start cracking and eventually leak.
On the ends there, but these ones are good, but you'll see those flanged ends start to crack and, like Ollie says, flare, and then you'll see pink staining and they'll start to drip. And you've seen us do those loads of times.
Yeah.
Subframe down, change the pipes. But they're okay on this.
Yeah, they're okay on this.
But the design's the same throughout the whole car on the 997, so I mean, should we quickly show the over-engine ones that can be an issue too?
Yeah, but they're less likely to go on a
Yeah.
997.2.
So when you're looking at one of these cars, you can see the crossover pipes by turning the wheel and sticking a torch in like we just did with the car in the air. But back here, you will not be able to see this when going to look at one of these cars on the floor without a ramp. But these are our little peepholes, aren't they, Ollie?
Yeah, these are the peepholes. So you can see the end of the over-engine coolant pipe there.
Just pull the torch back a little bit. Yeah, there we go.
And it will do the same thing. It will flare, it will crack, and then eventually leak. And to replace the aluminium pipe, it actually requires you to remove the whole engine. But these Gen 2s are actually less susceptible to it happening because you've got a slightly bigger under tray on the back here. So we've never actually done the over-engine coolant pipe yet. On the 997.
They're 4 years newer.
Yeah, but it seems to be genuinely because...
It's just a bad design, isn't it?
Yeah, but you have a bigger under tray here, so they actually have a lot more protection. So they don't tend to corrode as badly.
But that doesn't account for if someone's just topped up with too much water and they just corrode from the inside out.
Yeah, exactly.
So if someone's done that, a previous owner, they'll still corrode on those flanged ends because it's just a poor, it's basically a faulty design really, isn't it? That they've rectified on the 981 we've just seen. So those coolant pipes, that flanged end is the same throughout. So underneath here, we've got what we call the front to rear pipes. They've got the same, but they're completely protected. So we don't really change those at all, do we?
No, we don't do them too often.
So, right, that's that.
Another common issue, which we do all the time, because we go through lower arms like crazy.
But would you say this is more just age related rather than a design? Because I suspect when the 981s get to this age, we'll be doing the arms.
Oh yeah, most definitely.
I can't see why the arms are going to not go at the same age as these. So, should we show?
So the rear arms just start laminating. As you can see, there's bushes just completely coming away there. So they'll eventually start creaking.
And then the other bush is the one in the centre to the trailing arm.
The centre one isn't actually too bad on this car. It's just starting to crack, but mainly it's this bush over here. That is the reason why we're going to be changing these. And it's the same story on the other side here. You have to poke your camera up here. It's the same there, as you can see. The bush is just completely coming away.
Laminating. And just the material just starts to perish and get old and...
Yeah. So also on this car we've got the rear anti-roll bar D bushes. If you come around this side, you can see they're very badly perished there.
Get a good shot. There we go. Again, that's age related rather than this car being a poorer design. So again, when the 981 gets another 4 years old,
you start seeing.
We'll see that. That's more consumable items, isn't it? So the design improvements are the coolant pipes and the front shock assembly, aren't they? Really?
Yeah.
Anything else? I mean, this is very clean. This car, isn't it? We can talk about the chrome bits, can't we? I mean, we can talk about again. We've got triangular flange exhaust fixings on any car corrode because they get hot, cold. On a Porsche at the back, where water and dirt just splashes up. But look, they're not too bad. They're still a hex head.
They look to be replaced at some point.
Heat shields. So these have been done.
So these heat shields have been done. We often find that they're very badly corroded, and not many people do them because they actually require you to remove the whole exhaust manifold with the catalytic converter to replace the whole shield.
So you'd think just replacing a couple of 20 quid shields, because that's how much they are, there's 4 of them, so you're talking 80 quid's worth of shields, you think, it's not too bad. But as we've seen in previous videos, the cat, which is attached to the manifold, has got to come out the way. And then like we've just spoken about, these can be badly corroded. This side's a bit worse, actually.
Yeah.
And the manifold has to come off, and these bolts can be seized, usually How many would you have snap usually on a Gen 2?
On a Gen 2, yeah, probably 1 or 2.
So you have to heat them up and be very careful. If they snap, you then got to drill out the cylinder head thread very carefully. And it just ends up being lots of labour just to replace a couple of 20 quid shields. So
yeah.
Bit of a poor design there, to be honest.
They actually changed it on the 991. They've actually allowed, because the body of the car's a lot wider, the actual catalytic converter sits further out, so it actually allows you to have the space to change those without removing the manifolds.
What about on the 981?
The 981 doesn't have them.
No.
Because of where the catalytic converter sits.
And the engine's further forward as well, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Away from the exhaust.
So you don't have that issue.
Tandem pump.
Tandem pumps right up here.
Prone thing on a 997. They can get very corroded. So this is the tandem pump. The cover gets corroded. It gets corroded to the point where it gets to the O-ring seal, then it'll start to leak oil. So this one's obviously the original, but it's not corroded. Okay, so you find me here in my office, where unfortunately I spend most of my time, which is just a stone's throw from FGP. There it is. Anyway, what I've done is compiled all the documentation that we do after doing the comprehensive inspection, which we do to every sales car. So here's the report. If we run through them, one by one. So to start with, here's the Cayman. As we were speaking about, they're not presenting many prone issues that we're finding regularly on these cars yet. They're not of that age, and they've rectified some of the prone things from the previous generation, as we've spoken about already. So we're usually just finding routine servicing and consumables such as brakes, tyres, air conditioning, condensers, that kind of thing. However, on this car, no consumables whatsoever. We've just got routine servicing to attend to. So the PDK gearbox should be serviced every 6 years. The car is a 64 reg on a 2015. So it should have had a fluid change in 2021. We've got no history of that. As you can see, the mileage is very low. So that's probably why the owner hasn't done it. However, we'll want to do that. So at 6 years, you change the fluid, and at 12 years, you then change the fluid and the sump pan, which contains the filter. We've covered that on a previous episode, which you can go and watch. The minor service, they're every 2 years. It was last done in 2021, March, end of March. We're now the start of March. That's due very soon. So we'll be doing the minor service. The major's every 4 years. So that's not due till 25. Same with the brake fluid, every 2 years we'll be doing that, and the MOT's up in April, so we'll be doing that. The rest of the report, this is a very, very rare site. It's just ticks all the way through. Like I say, it's a very low mileage car, so that's that. If we look at the documentation, so we compile an estimate, so when someone buys the car, they can see how much work goes into it and what it would cost. So we usually charge £199 for the inspection. It's £349 for the service, £79 for the brake fluid change, £229 for the PDK clutch fluid change, £50 for the MOT, and we do a day's worth, well, near 2 days worth of detailing for £299. So the bill for that car to prep it would have been £1,446, including the VAT. Moving on to the 997 Gen 2. That we found, do you know what? This is a short list for a 997, but we still found a couple of those prone issues. Again, PDK, like I said, 6 yearly intervals. At 12 years, it should have the full service with the sump pan and the filter. We've got no history of that. We have got a gear oil change in 2017. So that was done when the car was 9 years old. No, 8 years old, sorry. So it was on 2 years late. 60,000 miles by this garage. So the next interval is due then, which is the end of this year, but we're going to do that now. So we're going to do the full PDK service, the 12-year service with the sump pan. If you look at the intervals for the service intervals here, they're not due till nearly the end of this year, but we're going to do them anyway. So we're going to do a minor service so it's fresh for the new owner. We're going to do, I've got that wrong, that should be 2023 there, I'll change that. We're going to do the brake fluid change as well. If we move through the reports, we've got a fuel cap seal perished, changing that. The aux belt is perished, we'll be changing that. The front suspension, as we spoke about, we'll be doing all that. The rear control arms on the suspension, we'll be doing that as we spoke about. Anti-roll bushes we spoke about, and the levelling rods I think we spoke about. Here's the document. So we've got the minor service. It's a bit cheaper on this car, $299, brake fluid's the same. 12-year service on the clutch, the PDK clutch, it's $529. The drive belt's 109. The front suspension, so what we spoke about potentially doing as a kind of fixed price for the shocks, springs, top mounts, top bearings, dust bellows, bump stops, and the drop links, all in is 1,515. Rear arms 387, miscellaneous 611, detailing 299, grand total 4,182.32, including the VAT. So there you go. If you buy a 997 Gen 2, that's almost the best you can hope for, to be honest, because usually you'll have coolant system work as well, and maybe some more consumable items such as air conditioning, condensers, etc. So that was a really tidy example and still needs 4 grand's worth of work. We'll be doing all that. We'll be doing all that to that one. I'm going to go up there, stop boring you, and we're going to go and take the cars out.